The number one request that I have been asked since I started this channel that I still haven't fulfilled is to share a list of adult games that women would enjoy, especially from boyfriends and husbands looking to share this experience with their partners. This is a really tough question because just like men, women like a wide variety of flavors and content. And if you know the flavors you like, then using that knowledge is way more useful than any general recommendation that I can make. In the absence of that self-awareness, however, there are some things that we can say that women tend to like more than men. For example, in 2018, 82% of the people who bought and read romance novels identified as women. Does that mean that all women like romance novels? Of course not. However, it does mean that women are more likely to like romance novels than men. That's not a judgment or gatekeeping, it is just an empirical observation. For example, there are more men who identify as preferring the foot flavor than there are people who identify as LGBTQIA in total. We are all different, and when it comes to flavors, there is no such thing as normal, but there is such a thing as a higher percentage of the population liking something. Overall, all humans tend to like the same things, but there are some measurable aspects where we see a difference. So please don't take this as what you personally should or should not like. The question I had going into this was, is there research that looks at what men like and what women like, and some of the differences between those things? Yes, but not a lot. So for anyone looking to do a PhD in psychology or sociology, feel free to reach out to me because I have some really specific projects that you could work on. What we do have does paint a reasonably compelling picture of what men like and what women like. There are also a few areas where there appears to be a bigger gap between what men like and what women like. The plan in this video is to talk about what the research says about what men and women like in forms of adult content in general, what the research says regarding some forms of content where we can see some specific differences, and then take those differences and extrapolate some of the flavors and qualities in video games that would most likely appeal to most women. The second video of this series will look at a specific game on Steam that checks a lot of these boxes and talk about the pros and cons of that. And the third video will cover 8 different games on Steam that are good choices for a woman's first game in this space. Of course, that is only a suggestion for someone looking for a recommendation. Like I said, if you already know the flavors you like, pick a game with those flavors. I need to stress again that this does not mean all women, nor does it mean that women who like something different are lesser or wrong. Nor does it mean that men who may like something that is more popular with women are less of a man. There is nothing wrong with the 18% of the romance novel market that identifies as men. I'm glad that they have found something that they enjoy. We tend to get easily twisted up when we talk about sex and sexuality with regards to shame and judgment. The purpose of this video is to help bring more women into the adult games market, not to make anyone feel alienated or marginalized. I expect some people will have very strong feelings and opinions on this subject, and I'm excited to hear from all of you. Let's just try to remember to be civil with each other in this discussion. There is also subject matter that I have removed from this video because of our alphabet overlords, but you can check it out on my Patreon page. That is also where the citations from all the studies that I reference in this video will be. If you have additional studies and citations you wish to share, I would love to hear about them. I cannot stress enough that there is just not enough research on sex and sexuality, especially when it comes to video games. This channel is about promoting the safe and healthy exploration of sex and sexuality. We need more studies, more research, and more independently verifiable data so we can actually figure out what exactly is safe and healthy. Because right now we have 10,000 years of bias and mystical bullshit and very little rationality. Hopefully this is enough of an explanation and a clear enough disclaimer so that I don't get attacked in the comments for even attempting to create a conversation about this subject. First of all, we should start with, how common is it for men and women to consume adult content? Now, this does assume that everyone has access, but the numbers consistently show about 99% for men and almost 90% for women. Personally, I think this number is more likely to be 99% for both men and women, but we tend to allow much more explicit written adult content to not be classified as pornographic. But even with that allowance, we're still talking about 10 out of 10 men and 9 out of 10 women consuming adult content. What about the forms of adult content? When adult content is broken down by researchers, one of the most common distributions we see are text, static images, and video. Basically, think of erotica as text and static images as pictures. With men, a little more than half enjoy erotica, 94% enjoy pictures, and 97% enjoy videos. With women, it's about 2/3 for each category. And of course, these numbers can add up to more than 100 because most people like multiple forms of adult content. You know what category we should see here, but there is basically no research? Video games. Seriously, I can't tell you how desperately we need more research on video games in general. Anyways, we have these three categories. But while a person may like all three, there will be a single preference. That is what is called a primary modality. When we look at the mean percent consumption of primary modalities, men choose videos 75% of the time, pictures 17% of the time, and erotica 6% of the time. With women, videos are also the most popular at 56% of the time, pictures 10% of the time, and erotica 28% of the time. An interesting part of this data for me is that the ratio of erotica consumption by men and women, 1 man for every 4 women, is almost exactly the same ratio between men and women who read romance novels. So while these numbers show that videos are much more popular, it does beg the question, where would video games fall if they were included in the research? Would visual novels appeal to women because of their being text-based, or less because of their focus on visual imagery? Almost all of the most popular adult content games on Steam contain animations, so it does stand to reason that men and women would both enjoy the format. Given the popularity of the Otome genre, it is reasonable to say that there is likely an untapped market for women in the adult game space. Great. So it's safe to say that the data shows that most women are likely to be predisposed to enjoy video games with adult content. Now we should ask, what are some of the differences between what men like and what women like in their adult content consumption, in order to ascertain potential flavor preferences? While men and women tend to equally prefer when the pleasure depicted by the male character in the porn appeared to be real, women are more likely to prefer when the pleasure depicted by the female character in the porn appeared to be real, and when the female character seemed to be enjoying herself. That does not mean that men don't enjoy this, just that women are more likely to enjoy it. I may have to add no hating along with no shaming for this video. So it is important for a game to show that all the sexual participants are actually enjoying themselves. Next, we have that men are more likely to enjoy when the female characters appear to have had plastic surgery, for example breast implants or labiaplasty. Women are more likely to enjoy it when the characters' bodies appear to be natural. So when I tested talking about this subject on the Discord, some of the feedback I got was that novels for women have highly unrealistic plot lines, and that they like guys with six-packs too. While both of those things may be true, we're not talking in this case about the plotline, but physiological characteristics. A six-pack is also within the realm of reality, whereas a 6'1" He-Man would weigh 720 pounds. Do we even need to discuss the plausibility of male genitals in most adult content games? Or can we acknowledge that realism and natural aren't currently commonly represented aspects in this space? Women are also more likely to enjoy when there was a storyline which brought the characters together to engage in sex. The characters, male and female, seemed to demonstrate that they had connection with one another. There was a storyline which added to the sexual appeal of the video. For example, it heightened your level of sexual arousal. And when sensual foreplay, caressing, kissing, stroking, occurred for at least 5 minutes before sexual intercourse occurred. So this means that a game should generally have a not insignificant amount of time spent on story and character development, and that the sexual interactions should not just be about, sex. Oh yeah, and the men were more likely to enjoy it when the female character was called a derogatory name, for example slut, whore. And men are more likely to enjoy all forms of money shots. I can't tell you how much fun it is to cite a study that uses the term money shots. Speaking of painting, what kind of picture does this paint for a video game intended for women? A plot-heavy story involving the development of meaningful relationships before the characters engage in coitus. Once things do start to get hot and heavy, a lot of time is taken in foreplay with a focus on showing that all the participants are actually enjoying themselves. Also, the characters appear more natural as opposed to some of the more hyper-idealized or magically impossible form. Like seriously, can we occasionally get a game without unnaturally enormous male genitals? So you want to know which flavor of game this absolutely does not describe? Corruption. which is currently the most common flavor with female protagonist games. This means that you are less likely to find a game for women where you play as a woman. Imagine you are a mostly heterosexual male. Given that data that Alphabet shares with me about my viewership, that should not be a stretch of the imagination for most of you. Now imagine that almost every male protagonist game on the market is focused on the male homosexual flavor. You'd probably play a lot fewer games than you currently do now if that were the case. That is currently the problem with female protagonist games in our industry. They're just not intended for women. Now, as the industry continues to grow, we will see more games for women. But right now, it is very hard to make a lot of good recommendations. However, in the next video, I'm going to talk about one of the best adult content games for women currently on Steam, and talk about how it does a good job with a lot of the aspects we covered today. And then the third and final video will look at a wider selection of games and touch on their strengths and weaknesses as a first-time game for women looking to explore the space. Hopefully, by the end of these 3 videos, you will all have a better understanding of what many women like and prefer when it comes to flavors, and maybe this will even help us all understand our own likes and dislikes better. I can tell you that my own personal understanding of who I am and what I like changed while researching this topic. I mean, honestly, I'm just hoping I don't get cancelled for daring to talk about this subject. But if I'm too afraid to talk publicly about something as important as women's sexuality, how can I expect anyone else to feel comfortable talking about any form of sex and sexuality? I really look forward to hearing from you, but just remember that Alphabet is always watching and waiting to auto-censor posts it deems unacceptable. Until next time, no shaming, just gaming. Thanks to all this month's support on Patreon. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you all.